Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Newsgram. The mission for equal rights for women, and in fact the idea of advancing rights for women, has been a long time in the making. Legal, sexual, civil, even voting rights have been on the docket just in the last 100 years. Now, I have to be very careful here because I don't want to give the wrong impression. This is not a political show, and it's not a history lesson. But despite the many movements throughout history, it seems we are still living in a male-dominated society. You're probably too young to remember the suffrage movement resulting in the 1920 ratification of the 19th Amendment, which ultimately gave women the right to vote. I was around for the women's liberation movement of the 60s and 70s, which was more about workplace and lifestyle issues than it was governmental. We've had the Riot Girls movement in the 1990s that shook up the music industry, and most recently, the Me Too movement, bringing awareness to sexual abuse and violence. They've all brought positive change. But we're not there yet. For Amy Croft, it's personal. In her new book, A Longing for Justice in a Patriarchal Society, she sums up her own experiences in a word: patriarchy. Now, the irony of a man doing this story is not lost on me, but just as white men marched with Dr. King in the 60s, I think a male can help shine a spotlight on a patriarchal society. Now, we may have differing opinions on all of this, but this episode of Newsgram is not about me. It's about Amy Croft. She's just written a book that focuses on her own complicated childhood and fraught adulthood. She understands the pressures on women, having worked in social services for the majority of her life. And she hopes that her story will encourage other women to find their way out of outmoded patriarchal arenas and move toward a more matriarchal vision. In the preface of her book, she says, "My journey has been hard for me, personally, but perhaps fighting for justice is better than longing for it." I love that quote. It takes guts to get off the sidelines and do something about it, and Amy is not fooling around. In her book, she shares her own personal trauma, and she refers to our male-dominated society as the big bad wolf. She writes, "This is no wolf. It's much more dangerous and insidious than a wolf. It's a beast that seems unstoppable. Its modus operandi needs to be examined so that we can reveal the breadth, width, and depth of it. It has been allowed too much power, too much leeway, and too much attention, and it has become a loathsome monster to women and children, and to many men as well." Now, I was going to stop there because I thought those were some pretty strong words, but she goes on, and it's pretty compelling stuff. Here's more. "There is a particular form of patriarchy, male control and domination over everyone else, which assumes many guises to get what it wants. It is present in just about every institution, organization, system, and society around the world. The perils of the patriarchy know no bounds. The world is run mainly by certain types of men who seek power and control over others, especially over women and children. This is not a recent phenomenon. If you look through the annals of history, you will see that this beast has been inflicted on the female gender since day one. I don't know about you, but I am sick of it to the depths of my being. And by that I mean the patriarchal bullying and the misogynistic need for control and domination over the female sex. Since the 1950s, I've been examining my opinions about it and what it represents in every society and era. It is far-reaching and corrupt." Wow. Her feelings are not vague. That is a segment from Chapter 1. And there is a lot more. She goes on to give you a very candid glimpse into her dysfunctional childhood, rape as a teenager, a series of unhealthy relationships leading to the loss of her children in a custody battle. There is eventually true love, new beginnings, and lots of life lessons learned here. If you're still listening to this podcast, then I'll bet there are some parallels in your own life or the life of someone you know. Amy Croft's book, A Longing for Justice in a Patriarchal Society, is ready for you to download now. It's at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and quite a few other places. And if you can relate to anything that I've said today, I think you'll enjoy this book. And that will do it for this edition of Newsgram from webtalkradio.com.